Good afternoon, teachers. I want to take a second to go over the technology benchmark with you. And the technology benchmark is two parts, as you can see right here. It's a lesson plan, and it is the lesson plan analysis, which is really a paper where you explain your choices in your lesson plan. And to a large extent, it's a research paper where you pull in the course readings and the course content to justify your use of technology and to explain your uses of technology in your paper. So I'm not going to read this part to you because obviously you can read that yourself. I'm just going to go down here, and it starts off with a rubric for the lesson plan. And we have our criteria over here, and then the different levels of degree to which you met that criteria, starting with beginning and proficient. This semester you want to be beginning, and your professional semester you will be in proficient. So the first one is uses appropriate technology to design and plan instruction that supports learning for all students. So every part of your lesson plan, and you're going to use the Bellarmine lesson plan template. I'll go over that in a second, probably in a different video, just so it doesn't get too long. But every part of your lesson plan template will discuss technology. So this first part uses appropriate technology to design and plan instruction that supports learning for all students. The key here is appropriate technology. So how did you determine that technology was appropriate? And that's where TPACK and SAMR, the frameworks, the models are going to come in, specifically the TPACK framework for how you determine so of all, let's say you're going to use an app in your lesson plan. All of the apps that are out there, tens of thousands of apps, why did you choose this one app to teach this lesson? Also, one of the things that many teachers would use, as they're designing their lesson plans would be things also like the internet and different resources that you, technology that you use to design your lesson. Second criteria, uses appropriate technology to provide differentiating instruction. So one of the great benefits of technology is that it allows us to differentiate instruction, whether it's using something like a smartboard where students, we're appealing to different types of learners, kinesthetic, auditory, visual learners. We're having them come up and interact with the board, dragging and dropping items, watching videos with, getting feedback from sounds that we've embedded in objects, or using using a tool like Flipgrid, which students can demonstrate their understanding of a particular concept by making a video, much like a Snapchat. Or a final example using something like Kahoots, which gamifies the experience of a formative or summative assessment and creates energy and excitement to engage and motivate students. So you're going to talk your lesson plan here. You're going to be thinking about how you're differentiating your instruction through the use of technology in those ways. Designs and implements research-based technology infused instructional strategies to support learning of all students. This is the part, again, that goes back to, drawing from our readings and our discussions in the course content. And there are obviously places throughout really the lesson plan where you will reference the research-based, the data-driven choices that you are making. One in particular that comes to mind is the section, I believe it's section 5, right before the procedures sections, where you're actually listing the technologies or the resources, whether it's books or other tools that you're using in your classroom, and you're actually citing in that particular part of your lesson plan how this supports student learning. Next, we have provides opportunity for all students to use appropriate technology to further their learning through critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. Again, this is addressed in multiple parts of the lesson. For example, when we talk about communication and collaboration, one of the things we think about there, or when I think specifically about the lesson plan, one area that I think about is the area, and again here I think it's section 3, where you're talking about your learning theory that you are aligning your lesson with, and this would be a place where you could talk about that. So if you're talking about Vygotsky and social constructive learning, and you're talking about communication being a big part of that, then technology, for example, a tool like Padlet or Flipgrid that I mentioned earlier, even a Google document allows you to communicate. Okay, that last example, the Google document, really, and Padlet and Flipgrid, all three of those examples also lead themselves to collaboration, which is addressed there, but then can also be addressed again in your procedures. And then next, the plan implements technology to assess students, assess data, and communicate results. There's only one type of technology you have to use in this lesson, and that's assessment technology. So that's, whether it's Kahoot or Socrative or Google Forms or something more or less traditional like Flipgrid, you're going to use some sort of tool to formatively or summatively assess your students in your lesson. And then finally, you want to address in your lesson how you are providing and maintaining a safe, secure, and equitable classroom environment. One place that this might happen is when you're talking about classroom management, right? That section in the lesson plan that addresses that. Okay, moving down to the second part of the lesson plan, which is the lesson plan analysis. This part of it is where this is a paper that you're going to write. The paper is going to be no more than 10 pages long. This is addressed in the syllabus. But in this part of the benchmark, essentially, not essentially, but to a large degree, almost verbatim, it looks a lot, at least this criteria part that we were looking at here, is the same as it is for the lesson plan, because what you're doing in the paper is you're going back, like I said previously, to the lesson plan, and you're giving a justification for those choices you made. So when it says provide a relevant research-based rationale explaining how technology is used appropriately, here's where you're going to talk about the article that you read about TPACK. And that's why it's so important for you to be reading the articles over the course of this semester. That's where you're going to talk about how the TPACK framework informs your selection of technology. Next one, offers relevant research-based rationale for how technology is used to appropriately differentiate. There'll be several articles, whether it's when we're talking about mobile learning and apps, or whether we're talking about assessment technologies, etc. They address differentiation of instruction, and you'll be referencing those. Offers a thorough review of research. As you see, here's where we get into specifics on this part about 4 and 5 APA cited articles. And you will have a reference page. Your whole paper will be set up, APA formatting. Place to look, of course, if you're not familiar with that, or to refresh your memory on it, is the Purdue OWL. But you will be citing internally in the paper. You'll have internal documentation, and at the end, you'll have a reference page. Next, thoroughly explains how lesson plan technology provides a variety of opportunities to communicate, collaborate, and address in creativity. These are, of course, our 21st century literacies, and this would be where you were talking about or addressing like the ISTE standards, and so this would be, you're going to learn about those this weekend. So they're very much connected to this. We also talk, again, you could be talking about collaboration as it related to the fact that you're using a Padlet. You could be talking about communication, to the fact that you're using a Google document. You could be talking about creativity because students are, using an app to create comics that tell a story. So there's a lot of applications here, or a lot of ways to address this particular criteria, as there are for all of them. Another thing, just real quickly, is you're going to want to tie all of the course content to your lesson. Why? because it's all going to tie to your course content. You know, when you're talking about, let's say you're talking about communication and you're talking about Flipgrid and how you use that, you're also going to be, it's also going to be an opportunity for you to talk to how you're overcoming the digital divide, because Flipgrid is a free device. You're going to be talking about how you're overcoming the digital divide. I'm sorry, you're going to be talking about how you're overcoming barriers because to technology integration, because it's a free app. You're going to be talking about how you're addressing the digital divide because you're utilizing this in your classroom with your students to make sure that they are, one, being exposed to technology, but they're being exposed to it at a high level as producers and not consumers. You know, again, you could be tying this to 21st century literacies. So there's all of these, all of the content that we're going to learn over the course of the semester is connected to your lesson, and you're going to flesh it out, and you're going to connect it to that lesson in your research paper. Thoroughly explains the use of technology to assess. This is when you're going to pull in the research where we're talking, that we're going to read about assessment technologies and talk about how it connects to the way that you use the assessment technology in your class. Then finally, the safe and secure and equitable classroom. This has to do with digital citizenship and digital footprint, and that's where you're going to talk about this in your lesson plan. Okay, so that's the benchmark. If you have any questions about it, I've created a Google Doc where you could ask those. I just wanted to go over it and kind of give you a broad overview of it. We'll continue to come back to this rubric and to the lesson plan template and talk about this as the semester progresses.